Welcome to the second day of the NATO summit. It is 6:06 p.m. and yours truly will begin commence with gratitude. Grateful, thankful that my rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee, and gotta thank my anonymous friend whom if I make a million, gonna give 50%, half a billion, half. Anonymous, yours truly here, Rainbow Dragon, Adrian, Hannah, Dragon Rebirthing during this COVID. Salutations, and rock and roll love. LOV to the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors. LOV. Gotta send some love, cause it's not all about that money. Some LOV, some health to all. NORAD, NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, today the second summit. I wanna hear some LOV, and the solution for Biden, cause this Quebecer Canadian was born three times. That is three. Twice was born as a man and once as a woman. You get that 50-50 now NOW. And yours truly, of course, served twice, post 1776 in the United States Army. And is here drilling for defense coast to coast. I'm going to be defending North Americans, my brothers and sisters, citizens, Quebecers, Canadians, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. All my protocols and initiatives are for defense. And I've written tens of thousands of pages of philosophy, as I am a philosopher, independent, Aspie, got at Asperger, so I repeat things twice, three times, twice, three times, twice or three times. Repeat, and I have obsessions, and I am neurodivergent, but it is not a mental illness, once again, Asperger's, it is a neurological mental psychic condition, once again, Asperger's is not a mental illness. It is a neurological mental divergent condition, and I'm saluting NATO troops today, Canadian Armed Forces, and I'm speaking from rock and roll side of the yours truly Rainbow Dragon to my brother citizen Bill Blair, Minister of National Defense of Canada. Gotta put a new protocol initiative to go change some diapers. If you're gonna put on a uniform to defend, it's first and foremost the children, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, throughout the daycares, and help this financially struggling, geopolitical understand theorists, because that is one of my main obsessions. Aspies, people with Asperger's, we got obsessive interests, and one of my obsessive interests is, of course, the study thereof of geopolitics, geopolitical analysis, and of course, philosophy. And sports and fitness, Canada lost yesterday, but we're gonna win that third place for that Copa America, right? Because we did good nonetheless to get to the first time that we got so far in a sport, in a soccer. So, congratulations, big LOV, come dance with Rainbow Dragon on the mountain, blah blah blah. Saluting NATO troops. We're gonna switch to that French because we in La Belle Province, and here in Quebec, Canada, we made what I call the Great Linguistic Compromise to continue to have peace and harmony across the collective North American civilization, aka the North American civilizational complex. And my brothers and sisters, as I am a geopolitical analyst and theorist, I do want to hear more the word LOV, because it's not all about the money. So, got an LOV, our troops love. Big hugs, big kisses to our troops and the firefighters. LOV, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, grocery store clerks. LOV, all involved in the distribution of food. Drop down, all allies and armies, pledge your allegiance, legions to our family, and do some push-ups. Always prescribe some working out, training, exercising. Working out, training, exercising has been, is, and shall continue to be my medicine and therapy of choice. Have been, and will continue to call for the mass financing thereof across what I call the collective North American civilizational complex, for people to be encouraged, finance too. Workout, train, and exercise. NATO 75th. Special edition overtime every time we rock and roll. Dragon love that rock and roll. Independent ass, we got at Asperger's, and I'm a philosopher, geopolitical understand theorist, and yours truly for NATO. North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Go NATO, go NATO, go NORAD, NATO unity. And of course, I want to hear the word LOV, because I'm analyzing the discourse, and from my brother Biden, Scorpio, of course, this artist, athlete, philosopher gonna prescribe for Biden to do better as a president of powerful man on free world. We gotta give him a massage. So somebody give every day a massage therapy session to Biden. I'm willing to volunteer because I was born in the USA three times. Post 1776, once as a man, twice as a man, and once as a woman. Yeah, sometimes I was born a man and a woman. I'm a mystic. You get that 50-50 now. Androgynous, yours truly, Adrian Hanna, Dragon philosopher. And Biden, for him to perform better in the debates, to fight that against Trump. And yours truly is a pro labor and love. Universal revolutionary centrist. I am a centrist, universal revolutionary centrist. My centrism is tied hand in hand with my trinity, holy trinity of theories: the CIT, citizen integration theory, the DRT, death fusion theory, and the democratic fusion theory. The democratic fusion theory, and of course, for the creation of the UE, the DRT. I want to hear Jens Stoltenberg big hugging. If I'll be give big loving to Jens Stoltenberg, would throw that West Side free world for world peace as well. Gonna give him a big hug, some big rock and roll. I want to hear the word LOV, because yours truly, Rainbow Dragon, aka Click Dick Dick Click, is not not taking any orders from anybody. No general, you get counted down. Those star stripes, you get degraded, demoted to generalship. LOV to all citizens. Make LOV tonight with consent and hygiene. Because if somebody not making LOV tonight, today, what are we fighting to save for civilization? That Wall Street ain't all about the money. And yes, I'm not totally selfless, not totally altruistic. I like to volunteer, but I'm grateful, thankful I got this on the ground layer, and I would love to have something better, to own a house. I never owned a house, in this life, in this life, in this life. In other houses, I built houses. I was a construction worker. Salutation to those construction workers. I actually worked on the Colosseum. I worked on the Colosseum. I worked on the Colosseum, and I worked on the pyramids in ancient Egypt. But I got hit by the sun, sunlight, satellites, and of course the archangels. And I forgot. I cannot disclose because I really don't know how I built it. But I know I was part of the construction of the pyramids, and of course the high priest, architects. They kept some of those secrets. I was merely a worker doing the hard labor in ancient Egypt to build those pyramids more than 4,500 years ago. Read Genesis chapter 50. Read Genesis chapter 50. Genesis chapter 50. That's a mystery. Mysteries. I don't know it all. I know the word Geopolitiks, and I know I got big kisses, trillions of kisses. Laying the foundations for the dancing goddess in the Dragon Kingdom, the public-private partnership called to all. First and foremost, with trillions of kisses. Right there, John Stoltenberg. Give it some LOV. To Jen Stoltenberg, some LOV. If not about love, I go death, death, death. I start not hearing well and making that good dance, and always brings me joy when I go outside and see people hugging, kissing, displaying public signs of affection. And got big loving for Jen Stoltenberg. I want to do a session where I give some big hugs, some big rock and roll to our NATO troops. I would love to dance, dance, dance. Dancing is my favorite sport, and I am an independent geopolitical analyst and theorist who actually I got proof of work to prove what I'm saying, that back in 2019, as a geopolitical analyst and theorist, I actually predicted the current course of events, and I predicted an international conflagration. In other words, a World War III, back in 2019 October, and I've actually created a workout training program system designed to go hand in hand with the scenario. Believe it or not, I have proof of work because I've been working here in this underground room, Oxford Temple, an independent Aspies, got at Asperger's, a philosopher, geopolitical analyst and theorist and artist, and I'm going to raise the cup. I'm going to drink some of the coffee, and grateful, thankful once again my rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee, and encourage all to work out, train, exercise, and get that NATO rolling. And all my initiatives and protocols and calls are fundamentally for a public-private partnership across what I call the collective North American civilizational complex across North America, and of course NATO, because we're part of NATO. Where North America, Canada, we're part of NATO, and supposedly latest information that I do have is that we'll meet the target 2%, and I'm going to want to discuss my initiatives fundamentally without too much disclosure, because of course some of them have to be drills and kept a little bit secret from my, as I am a philosopher and a geopolitical analyst and theorist, in parallel of course to military tactician, and of course military drills in many ways, of course in the fundamental ways, as I served many past lives, many incarnations in different armies of the world, and in the USA served in the United States Army post 1776 twice, yours truly. So now we're gonna get a little bit of listening to the NATO summit discussions, and I want to hear more LOV. I want to hear more LOV for our troops. So no 7 minutes will pass since I will not say LOV. And again, to the generals of the free world who might march more than the generals during COVID, so many steps, and I got those boots which I'm auctioning for $1 billion, to give half of that billion to my anonymous sister friend Jen Stoltenberg. I want to hear some LOV because I'm not taking any orders from nobody who says no general. Then I said LOV, 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 just like Tom Brady. When you fight that defense, offense, and sometimes you lose, sometimes you win, and I lost a lot of wins. But sometimes you got to keep it sportsmanship, and after like a game of football, gridiron, that hut, defense. We got to hug and say love you, just like Tom Brady says and Purdy says to the other players. Black, white, we played that rainbow in North Americans Unite is the call. NORAD, NATO, and yours truly, Jen Stoltenberg. I want to hear a little bit more LOV for our troops when you discourse. I know we got to sometimes keep it professional, and the professionalism of our troops and incarnations of professional philosophies throughout the West, but sometimes we got to get that family like, and of course all Canadians, Quebecers, thou are my family, coast to coast, 44 million. I consider you family, and I am for the defense. If I would put somebody to defend, it would be only to defend coast to coast. We must admire it for the defense of the collective North American civilization. And of course, it starts with those children, those in the daycares. Thank you, daycare workers, for the changing of the diapers. Firefighters, the LOV, somebody gave them some good massage therapy sessions. The firefighters deserve to be good massage more than yours truly. Although I am craving one massage therapy session, I cannot afford it. But you know what? The firefighters deserve it and earn it more than yours truly. Philosopher and dancer. So somebody give them some good loving, some good massaging, some good kissing, some good hugging. Hug like you never hugged before tonight. If World War III starts and we get that nuclear warheads, better hug good and make LOV tonight as I go carpe diem it every day with hope for tomorrow. And yours truly today, not perfect, far from it. We gotta get, of course, a little bit of drills and gotta meditate, of course, on everything that we have across the collective North American civilizational complex. And of course, the philosophy is, of course, that the body is a temple for pleasure and purpose. And how do we invest in the body? With some good action, LOV, and about the storm's gonna come, a little bit of thunder. Rock and roll for the thunder for the troops in that NATO coast to coast. We got who's gonna be that 33rd, calling for Mexico to be 33rd, calling for Mexico to be 33rd, and part of the ongoing call to the Dragan Septennium, my call for a public-private partnership to implement my philosophies and theories and initiatives for fundamentally a public-private partnership throughout, of course, the North American civilizational complex and throughout NORAD, NATO, of course, part of the Dragan Septennium call to all to support my initiatives and my protocols, and of course the PPP of the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, of which I'm laying the foundations. First and foremost, 718 trillions of kisses, some push-ups, drop down, give Dragon 10 push-ups with it, and some hogs and some squats. And again, encourage all to work out, train, exercise. I'm going on that Jen Stoltenberg. Fundamentally, I'm a North American, pro-North American, as much as I'm studied and learned throughout the world and international as I am for world peace, a world citizen. Fundamentally, I'm a Quebecer, Canadian, North American. This Hawk Island, Montreal metropolis is fundamentally really my knowledge and what I know. And of course, as I am for world peace, I am fundamentally a North American Canadian. So as much as I can go in depth and analyze profoundly and in depth intellectually in a cosmopolitan, an academic, very academic, thorough digital knowledge, geopolitics, because I'm an independent geopolitical analyst and theorist. And of course, I have my propositions for the expansions of NATO for the 33rd to beat Mexico, Mexico to be admitted into NATO ASAP, and to get in the 7 coming years to 44, maybe that 45 NATO member countries. I know there's several countries at the moment for planning accession, and of course Sweden. Sweden was that 32nd, and we're celebrating today the 75th anniversary of that NATO. So we gotta also be mindful, of course, that we gotta be expanding throughout North America. That is, and since the United States, Canada, and Mexico, we constitute a collective North American civilization. We gotta also be mindful of what's unfolding across the world geopolitically and the alliances which are formulating now as I'm speaking, and throughout COVID and throughout the past months and weeks and months and years. And of course, they're ongoing today as I'm speaking, doing this live stream on Facebook and on YouTube, that the solidification of the Russia-Chinese alliance, Russia, China, and North Korea, is a major geopolitical shift in terms of the power balance. So expanding NATO would be a more counterbalance to that expansion, and that protocols, and of course protocols for the expansion of NATO, of which I am calling the Mexico to be the 33rd, as I'm a geopolitical analyst and theorist. So, and of course to expand world peace, and super important to channel the aggression and to send some LOV. And now, since I've been hearing today that there might be the possibility that Canada, we're gonna get that target of 2% defense spending, because NATO's calling Canada a little bit of a laggard in the news, blah blah blah. So that means that if we're spending now 1.3% to get to 2%, do the math, is 2.0% minus 1.3% is 0.7, 0.7, 0.7%. And of course we gotta expand that NATO, so we gotta get that 0.7% and get my protocols and base our strategy to the fact that Canada, we got a lot of land mass, we got a lot of land mass, we got a lot of land mass. So the fact that Quebec is so big, Canada up north, we got different provinces, and to expand it and create centers. I'm calling for 11 centers throughout Canada, of course, for that investment to get to the target of 2%, to invest all that money, the majority of that money in the coming 7 years, to invest it so that we have these centers as I envision it for the defense strategy, and to have, of course, drills, military drills, and exercising and training citizen integrated in terms to defend in case of a thermonuclear war, and in case the war gets nuclear, and then of course to prepare for a possibility that China might invade Taiwan, which is known as the Republic of China. Taiwan and China, mainland China, are to be differentiated, but it's a geopolitical point, of course, which can, of course, turn into a conflict, into an armed struggle. And in order to prepare for that, we got the complex of North American civilization, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. That way is the East, we got the Atlantic, and that way is the Pacific. And of course, to formulate the possibility to evacuate citizens, a certain percentage of citizens from the European continent, of which, of course, 30 member countries countries, 30 member countries are part of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Of course, Ukraine at the moment of the Russian invasion was not part of NATO. I'm not going to go into the deep discussion about that situational conflict, the major conflict, which has not been a conflict like the Ukraine-Russia since the end of the Second World War, so in more than 70 years. And the Middle East situation, the Israel-Hamas and possibility of Hezbollah, and whatever, to analyze that situation is going to take me hours just to analyze it. But nonetheless, keep in mind, as an independent geopolitical analyst and theorist and protocols, I am, of course, first and foremost, fundamentally, my initiatives protocols are for what I call the collective North American civilizational complex. In other words, North America, Canada, US, Mexico, and expanded to our military alliances, which is NATO, of which, of course, Italy, Germany, Sweden is the newest member, 32nd members. We celebrate these 75 years. And of course, we got, of course, Bulgaria, Romania, another who trying to join. I believe it's Georgia trying to join, and we also Turkey has also joined. So we got to keep that in mind, that we need to possibility to have to, of course, evacuate a certain percentage of the population of Europe to bring them in North America. And since we have massive land expansion and land, of course, we're going to be able to do that to honor certain military alliance for the defense of the population. Of course, I strategize, and of course, I did a little bit of meditations in the past years, especially since the Russia-Ukraine crises and conflict has been becoming more and more tense and more dangerous, and more, of course, possibility of escalation in the conflict and expanding the conflict. So doing those drills and doing those meditations as I do 24/7, I got Asperger's, so I got a routine. And for years and years and years, I wake up, I do my sun salutations, my spiritual mystic. I'm a mystic. I don't have all the answers, but of course then I proceed to do geopolitical analysis, and I've written tens of thousands of pages of philosophy and geopolitical analysis and theory of geopolitics, of course, as I envision, of course, the national and international conflagration back in 2019, when, of course, have envisioned and have foresaw in a general manner, have predicted, not in a detailed manner, have predicted in a general manner, have predicted the current situational events and the current geopolitics which is unfolding, of course, at the moment. And of course the escalation, the possibility of escalation with the China-Taiwan, which is Taiwan is known as the Republic of China. And again, I repeat that no matter how much an in-depth and detailed protocol and philosophical and academic analysis I do, and I am a master of geopolitics because that is my obsessive interest. So geopolitics is my kingdom, my realm, my domain, and I got proof of work because I've been working for years and years and years, especially since the year since I came out of my depression. And now I'm joyous. I'm just financially stressed, but nonetheless, I gotta mention before I go into proceeding with the victims and the protocols and my initiatives and my call to all willingly loving, that, of course, 7 years ago, I traveled. I was more than 7 years ago. I was depressed and suicidal. I just remember I have some blackouts of memory. And I just remember moving here from a moldy place. It was very moldy, and it was very moldy, and there's lots of mold where I used to live. And I came here to a better place. I always say jokingly, of course, but with some truth in it, that if I would have stayed where I used to live, I would have probably been dead or in jail. If I say that if I would have stayed where I used to live, I would have probably been dead or in jail. I also say that if I would have stayed where I used to stay, I would have probably been dead or in jail. But I started working out when I got out of the depression in 2017. In August and September, you have crossed August and September 2017, because I got those tickets to prove. Of course, what I'm discussing, I still kept the tickets from 7 years ago, and I crossed Canada coast to coast. And that event propelled me, and I came out of depression because I said to myself, so many things to do. The big country of yours truly that has my country, Canada, my continent, North America, so many things to see, to do. So when I reached Banff, I remember when I reached Banff and I saw those mountains, I was like, wow, what a country, what so many things. When I crossed the prairies and I started so much training, since then I started working out, training, exercising. I lost about 84 pounds, of course, since then, and I'm still on a fitness journey every day, carpe diem it, and I started still working, and I had many employments and jobs. But with Asperger's, the problem with many Aspies encounter is that the maintenance of employment is a difficulty, as it is the maintenance of friendships. And over the past more than 7 years, I made a lot of friends. I lost like 99% of my friends. I'm making only friends with benefits now, only friends with benefits now, and pledge your allegiance, to our family, coast to coast, North Americans unite is the call, North Americans unite is the call, North Americans unite is the call. And We throw it up for that NATO, NATO, NATO. Saluting with that rock and roll. Rainbow Dragon got a kiss for you. Got a kiss and got a hug. No need to hiss. Just do the hawk, 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 HAWK. As yours truly is grateful, thankful again today. And I'm excited that, of course, there's people who, when I go out into my second home, the mountain, I see people and young people hugging and young people holding hands and some joy. And that brings me joy and hope, because I said that's worth fighting for and putting on a uniform and carry some weapons to defend that, to march coast to coast across North America and to see my youth, my youth, my youth, my children dance in the streets happily and securely and safely and work out, train, exercise, and exercise safely and security and dance and whatever it is, kiss and hold hands and share and do all the activities that we do, sports, fitness, track and field, because sports and fitness is another of my obsessions. So when I see people holding hands and kissing or hugging, I say that's worth fighting for, putting on a uniform, because it's not all about the money. Not all about the money, not all about the money. We cannot base our whole civilization, of course, North American collective complex, civilizational complex. We constitute a collective complex, emerging civilization. The North American civilizational complex, we are an emergent civilization. That is part of my philosophy, but we're not totally divorced, but yet we have a distinction from Western civilization. So that is my overall general philosophies, and of course, my philosophies and theories and protocols have been written over the more than past than 7 years, 7 years plus now, 7 years plus, and some of them I have on USB keys written by hand on philosophy, tens of thousands of pages of course, rock and roll songs and philosophies and geopolitical analysis, and I've been dictating them in an oral, communicative manner online, and especially on my long 3 hour vlog, marching vlogs on the mountain, which is my second home there on Mount Royal, as I'm calling for the Dragan Zero NORAD NATO Summit. ASAP, come Elon Musk, Bill Gates, my Scorpio brother, discuss the implementation of my Trinity of theories, as I'm calling on all institutions and organizations, public and private, to support the dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, my dream for the rebirth and defense coast to coast of the North American civilizational complex. And of course, I am financially struggling, but I'm rich in rock and roll philosophy, geopolitical analysis, and I got some fitness, willing to get in the rink with whoever it is in the rink, of course, with Usyk and Fury and Donald Trump first, because I got these gloves. Got these gloves donated from my anonymous friend a few years ago when I started challenging Donald Trump. So I feel they've been a little bit ripped and used, but I'm gonna still use them some more in the coming days, weeks, and months as we fight, of course, for LOV, for security, love, and security got to be ensured. Freedom got to be ensured, and freedom is a new thing. We got all these things which we got to work on, but I'm just gonna focus now on the NATO meeting, and of course, I'm gonna discuss, and I want to call all from my brothers Scorpio Biden, Joe Biden, to just told me that I want to hear more LOV, some LOV to our troops, LOV to our troops, LOV to our troops, and somebody make them some good loving, because that's worth also fighting for, and we got to get that love. And it's not, of course, we cannot base our civilization just on strength and military force. It's part, to defend, to put on a uniform, to be strong and strength. We have to have something complementary. We have to have counterbalances and balances to force and strength. We have to have love and understanding to force and strength, as we got to have brains and muscle. I got to salute the construction workers. LOV salutations to the construction workers on the cranes, firefighters, coast to coast, going ocean to ocean deep, and of course the butchers, the bakers. LOV to the nurses, the doctors, those making a sandwich now, doing the deliveries across North America, to deliver a pizza, to deliver some food so that citizens are nourished, to do the activities, whether watching TV, going online, spreading some love, and watching some football, watching some soccer, watching some dancing, all the activities which we do, the technical, the scientific, and of course the physical and the moral and the spiritual, right? Because I got some spirituality, but I do not know all the answers, and I'm calling for all support to support. I want to build three different buildings. I want to build three different buildings. One is a simple, austere, severe, scarlet, red, crimson, scarlet or red or crimson, the House of the Dragon, and the Forgotten Goddess Temple. I want to build here in Montreal a Forgotten Goddess, Forgotten GODDSS, Forgotten Goddess Temple, and of course the Rainbow People's Palace. I want to build those three buildings, and I know I have to put something on the table more than philosophies. I'm gonna put some whatever I can, massage and wash feet and all the services and rock and roll and cheer on and put some brains and some muscle, whatever it is. Sometimes we gotta get that service, you know. And then XYZ, that's what I want to build, of course, the Forgotten Goddess Temple, and we gotta get it on the XYZ, and we gotta salute our troops, and gotta meditate, of course, everything that's happening now across the collective North American civilizational complex, and gotta send some LOV to Jen Stoltenberg, some good of that good loving Jen Stoltenberg, and we got to get it and good from that doing it. Sometimes it requires the doing, you know. We got to get the philosophies and the doers, and so many things I don't know. Radio waves, telecommunications, sometimes they get that hack getting a parallel life. I'm a super Aspie scientist, supercomputer. I design supercomputers, ICBM rockets, supercomputers, and of course all the things of civilization and satellites in that parallel life. In this life, I'm an independent Aspie geopolitical analyst, scientist, artist, athlete, philosopher, and geopolitical analyst and theorist. That's my kingdom, my domain, you know. And with Asperger's, there's no medication, so I got to work on my symptoms. And sometimes I need to be told just speak less, so I'm not interested in the subject. And sometimes it's better to be direct, you know, straightforward. And XYZ, I'm Rainbow Dragon. I got that rainbow play with the black and the white, and I want to hear some more LOV. That was my only wish. And of course, I'm going to discuss now my call for what to do with the 2% to get to 2% of the defense spending to the percentile, which is required to meet the requirements of NATO, the requested requirements of spending in defense, national defense for NATO is 2%. So we're currently at about 1.3. So if you do the math, 2.02% minus 1.3, 0.7%. So 0.7% would be, what would we do? We should do with that money. Let's go Bill Blair, my cousin Justin Trudeau, with sometimes I'm 50-50, 70-30 with my cousin Justin Trudeau, my uncle Legault, and my brother Scorpio astrologically Bill Joe Biden. Joe Biden needs as a solution to perform well and debate and perform better. Joe Biden needs an hour, at least 1 hour minimum, of a good massage therapy session every day. Biden needs a good massage therapy session a day. I'm willing to volunteer for Biden and the First Lady to give them, of course, I'm here not far away from Washington, but of course, I could do a little bit of volunteering to get in there on my Biden, get in there. Let's go, Biden, get in there with some gloves and some good massaging on that body. So I perform for leader of the free world, you know, to make some good decisions, and of course to get them to get a little bit invigorated with, because rather we can criticize and get that blah 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 for like 25 hours, 7 years of blah blah. Gotta get some push-ups, gotta get some marching steps, gotta get some kisses and some massages. And I am desperate for a massage therapy session, but I'm grateful, you know. I got everything I need. My rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee, and you know, you guys massage each other for me in my honor, and that will be me with a balance. That will give me some joy to see your joy, and if somebody does that, you know, I'm willing to volunteer and exchange. And friends with benefits only, blah blah blah. If not about love, I go death, LOV. Nothing to hear about it. I can serve, be served, and we gotta get that 50-50 compromise. It ain't all about the money. Sometimes it's the loving, honey. And this rock and roll for my friend who wasn't my friend because of the money, because I never had any. Gotta give it for that Joe Biden. Give him a massage therapy, huh? No, what? Can, I was just working, independent work. Anyways, so for Joe Biden, like I said, I got something in my eye. Got something in my eye. Anyways, for Joe Biden, I think that's what will be a solution, you know, for him to perform better in the debates versus Donald Trump. Somebody 1 hour to get there every day for Joe Biden since he's president, to do some good massaging to Joe Biden and maybe even the First Lady with it, you know, and that would be some solution. I think he will perform better if he gets a 1 hour of massage every day, because he has to travel and speak. Hey, hey, hey. No, I believe that's totally true. It might be true. I'm sure it can be. Disagree? Mm. Yeah, so instead of, you know, sometimes we gotta criticize, but we offer some solutions, you know. So myself, I'm mostly focused on solutions, and I like to do. And of course, rather than argue, I'd rather be doing and just doing, you know, just doing. I'm not perfect, far from it. I don't play self-righteous. As some things I am mediocre, I admit it. As some things I am so-so. As some things I am average. As some things I am average. As some things I am so-so. As some things I am mediocre. As some things I am average. At other things I am average, mediocre, so-so. I am great, super, and excellent at geopolitics. Dancing is my favorite sport. Nobody dances, and I got some rock and roll. And back to what I was saying about the percentile of the to do with that percentage, 0.7% to get the required to meet the required defense spending of 2%. I believe we should expand, of course, the invitations to come to the armies of the NATO, the 30 countries of NATO plus the 31 the United States, to do and to build 11 centers. 11 centers, 11, the number after 10 is 11, before 12 is 11, to build across Canada 11 centers where of course they would have different locations, and with my meditative initiatives and to able to train, to have the capabilities for training for NATO member countries, because Canada, we are, although we are not meeting the requirements, we have land, we have massive land where the armies can come from France, from Italy, from Germany, from all the 30 countries that are part of NATO in the Europe. So we can design 11 places, and I have my imagination and my train, but of course these are matters which I got to discuss with the generals, and of course with Bill Blair in our security and armed forces salute. Gotta get that LOV, and I'm willing to rock and roll and do some drills with you, and of course meditative 24/7 as a geopolitical analyst and theorist, and where and how can we could be doing 11 across Canada, and then NATO member countries would come in rotative manners every monthly, bi-monthly, every 3 times, 4 times bi-monthly, or every month, or every second month, or a few times a year, 3 times a year, 4 times a year. Let's show at least the 4 seasons, to get for at least minimum 4 times every season, because we got 4 seasons: spring, we got summer, we got autumn, and we got winter. So for the next 7 years, as we're gonna plan to expand NATO, calling for Mexico to be the 33rd. And my ideas and my protocols is for Canada. I'm putting this online. You can take it and do it. I don't want any reward for this. My reward will be, of course, for the collective security of Canada, coast to coast, coast to coast. And if you want to donate, whatever, want to expand and know some more information about it, I'm open for business. And as an international, of course, as an independent geopolitical analyst and theorist and social philosopher, and of course, whatever it is, dancing with it, I can dance and rock and roll for our NATO troops. A lot of with the scoops. Let's go on the food. For the food, with the farmers and the bakers and the butchers and the truckers and those grocery store clerks and those changing some diapers in the daycare's got a LOV. Our NATO troops for you to see. So the program and the call is to build 11 centers across Canada. Of course, 11 centers across Canada for defense protocols and initiatives for the defense of the collective North American civilizational complex, and of course to have the defensive capabilities to, of course, train in case of a thermonuclear war, and how we would do the simulations in order to evacuate. It would have to be a public-private partnership, and of course has to be the mobilization of citizens, and of course of the airplanes and air manufacturers and the airports, and of course all transportation, aviation companies, in order to of course expand and be able to evacuate a certain percentage of the population of NATO member countries, or the population of NATO member countries, whatever the 30 countries is. It would have to be by priority, and of course a certain population in case of a nuclear war, in case of a thermonuclear war between NATO and Russia, or the war expanding into NATO member countries, of which Moldova is not part of NATO, but Moldova was part of the Soviet Union. So Moldova was part of the Soviet Union, but nonetheless, to train for such a simulate, sea and air, and we got a lot of lakes. We have a lot of lakes, so that is another strength which we are going to be able to do, because we got a lot of lakes. So having lakes, of course, meaning that the fact that we have lakes, it is something which of course we have to take into consideration and into account, the fact that we have many lakes and different geography. Canada is so expansive, we have lakes and mountains, so we can simulate all the geography of Europe. In Canada, we can simulate all the geography of Europe in these 11 centers in different manners whatsoever. And of course I have kind of know a little bit of how. I'm always learning every day, but of course we have mountains and lakes, and meditating on that fact, we'll be able to do that, of course. And I'm not going to divulge more details of my philosophies and theories about it, but of course it is something which I'm calling for. So there we go. To put that 0.7%, to get it to 2%, we got to do that across Canada, and that is my main call, that this be done ASAP. It starts with me here today putting these ideas and this call for action to get, as we're as of course you got to notice in the news that we are supposedly going to move in the coming days, weeks, and months and years ahead to get to 2% of the required spending, defense spending for NATO member countries' requirement to spend 2% of the GDP, the GDP, the gross domestic product, the GDP, the gross domestic product, the gross domestic product of 2%. So that requirement, of course, to move there to 2% is gonna be an increase of about 0.7% or more. So that's what I'm calling for that money to be put and finance these 11 centers, and in parallel with my DRT, standing for debt refusion theory, for the creation of the UE, to take all the public and the private debt of Canada, US, Mexico, and of course to convert all that public private debt to US dollars, and all that to finance a new bank, a North American bank, parallel to the ECB. It can be united with the ECB and NATO member countries, actually all NATO member countries, to have a common currency called the UE, Universal Exchange Unit, the UE, U dot Universal E dot Exchange Unit, the U dot Universal E dot Exchange Unit, the U dot E dot Universal Exchange Unit, to have the Universal Exchange Unit, to have the Universal Exchange Unit, to have the Universal Exchange Unit, then created of course by the DRT, taking all debt refusion theory and implementing the protocols of course for the creation of this new currency can be transatlantic, for the creation of the U. And with that money we're going to be able to mass finance citizens to work out, train, exercise, and rebuild military and complex, and of course mass finance the rebuilding of infrastructure across the collective North American civilizational complex. And here in Quebec we got clean zero pollution energy. I gotta give a LOV to the workers of the past. Big rock and roll rainbow love to those who build the dams, Hydro-Quebec dams, for me to have this clean energy, which requires no, of course this is clean energy which I'm utilizing across all Quebec. We have Hydro-Quebec, many dams, like 63 dams now, and we're going to be able to get 7 more dams to get to the number of 70 in the coming 7 years as the 10. If we focus on it, I'm willing to sing some rock and roll, and again, more than blah blah blah, wash some feet and do some massages with it, blah 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 blah, together with it. So XYZ, that is my call, a little bit of a fundamental. And now I'm just gonna listen a bit to the delivery of the speech by Biden, the NATO speech, as I'm gonna be meditating on and cheering on and imagining I'm there cheering, because of course I am a Biden supporter. I am a Biden supporter. I am a Biden supporter, you know, and I'm a pro-labor love universal revolutionary centrist. My revolutionary centrism is tied hand in hand with my holy trinity of theories to be implemented via LOV, the CIT, citizen integration theory, the DRT, debt fusion theory, and the democratic fusion theory via the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is LOV, and sometimes gotta get that love by that action. So yours truly, that's what I'm calling for again, to establish 11 centers. It could be a dedicated square kilometers, square miles, of course, a big expansive land across Canada, different places. It could be 3 in Quebec, 3 in Ontario, the rest spread out across Canada, or 2 in Quebec, 2 in Ontario, the rest spread out about Canada, coast to coast, and in the north, in the Yukon, Northwest Territories as well. In northern Quebec, here are a few centers where we could simulate the emergency scenario of a nuclear war to evacuate citizens from our allies, military allies, as we're celebrating that 75th years of the military alliance known as NATO. And as we meditate, of course, that the fact that the Cold War lasted more than 44 years, almost 45 years, from March 1947 till December 1991, the end of December. So more than 40, almost 45 years. 44 years and 9 months, specifically, exactly 44 years and 9 months. 44 years and 9 months was the duration of the Cold War. That's how long the Cold War was. And we built a lot of ICBM rockets, and of course satellites and complex, of course military complex, and of course we have nuclear weaponry. And of course the ICBM rockets from Russia, in theory the Yars-24, can travel 10,500 kilometers, 10,500 kilometers, 10,500 kilometers, 10,500 kilometers. In theory, from Moscow to Montreal, they could travel in theory. Of course, from Moscow to Montreal is 8,500 kilometers. From Moscow to Montreal is 8,500 kilometers. From Moscow to Montreal is 8,500 kilometers. That means that it can travel even further down into the coast. Well, not coast to coast really, but if it's launched from after close to Moscow, we can travel, of course, in inner Canada, all the way, of course, to Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. It could travel in the innards of Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and of course, all the way to Ontario, theoretically, in theory, of course, because we know they can travel 10,500 kilometers. So if from Montreal to Moscow is 8,500, let's do the math. 10,500 minus 8,000, that's 2,500 kilometers. So from Montreal more than 2,000 kilometers out west, because it would be, if it's launched from the east, will cause the Atlantic, right? So in theory, theoretically, in theory, that's the case, but of course it's never been put into practice, and let's hope that it's not, and we resolve our differences with compromise, and with my brothers and sisters across North America who are black, 13.3, 13.4, you know, sometimes we have it in us. Look, here we made the great linguistic compromise. We have some racism. Sometimes it's not open. We're not even aware of it, that we have prejudices and biases. We got to work constantly. And to my black brothers and sisters who are 13.3, 13.4, my neighbors included, if I am to work on some racism, it is with some action, some hugs. I offer hugs and kisses and whatever money I don't have, whatever the case may be. But that will be the case, you know, so that we continue to work together on reconciliation, reconcile with my brothers and sisters natives, and to reconcile across the West, of course, in such a manner where we learn, of course, to work together more and on our differences and take some action, of course, as we're celebrating the 75th anniversary of NATO, as that's what I'm calling for as a proposed protocol and initiative for that, as we're moving to get close to 2% of the spending requirement from our GDP, the Canadian GDP, and right now we spend about 1.3%, so to get to that 2% is about 0.7%, a few millions and billions, which is going to be required. So my call to invest to get to that 2% is to establish these 11 centers in big spaces across Canada with military equipment, and of course with drills, to have our allies come to Canada and base our main strength on the fact that we have so much geography and diverse geography. We got mountains, we got lakes, and we can train, or we can have host, and never has a summit, NATO summit, been hosted in Canada. How about let's host it in Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, maybe Montreal, Ottawa in 2026, because the next one is going to be in Holland, I believe. So never has a summit been held in Canada. So let's do 2026, 2027, or 20. Let's do ASAP. Next one is going to be in Holland, from my understanding. But I'm also calling for a summit, you know, for a summit. If I would have been in Washington, I would have loved to sing a little bit rock and roll for our NATO troops. I always do sing for the rock and roll when I go on my marches anyways, for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, those chopping some salads, preparing some hamburgers, some buns now. They're also athletes. I got to always salute. I mentioned, of course, that in where I live, reside, I got 3 services. Every week there's the compost being picked up, the recycling being picked up, and the garbage being picked up. And of course, that's part of a public service, and we need to get that public and that private together. It's always a balance, a harmony, and equilibrium. The public and the private to work together. The PPP, everything that I'm calling for is a PPP, a public-private partnership across the collective North America civilizational complex, across the collective North America civilization, across North America. All what I'm calling for is the PPP, public-private partnership, of course, to be established. Part of my dancing goddess in the Dragon Kingdom, the dream for the collective North America civilizational complex, and NORA and NATO, and of course to implement the protocols, the aforementioned protocols, which of course I've so decided to declare, and of course to discuss them, and my initiative protocol to be taken action as a public-private partnership to do that, to establish 11 centers where military training and citizen integrated training will be taking place for emergency situations such as a nuclear war, and of course the possibility that Taiwan and China, another geopolitical event, will be in conflict, in open conflict in the coming days, weeks, and months. For all I know, it could be now, tonight at midnight, or at 3 o'clock in the morning, our time, local time, because we got time zones, or tomorrow, or the day after, in weeks. It could be that the People's Republic of China, which is mainland China, it could be that they take action, military aggression against the island known as the ROC, Republic of China, which is of course also known, aka Taiwan. Taiwan is known as the Republic of China, so both have China in them, because their conflict dates in the 20th century and unresolved, for more really unresolved civil war, from it dates from the Chinese Civil War before Mao Zedong established the People's Republic of China in October 1949. And I always parallel with how here in North America we've been able to make a concordium to have continuing harmony, peace, and equilibrium by making the great linguistic compromise, the great linguistic compromise of North America, and of course to make the great linguistic compromise of North America, and of course the North American great linguistic compromise, and of course to continue to have so with our brothers and sisters who are black. And sometimes it's important, if you have more financial economic means, to finance and give people second, third chances. And of course my call for the North American criminal rehabilitation Rehabilitation Act, Citizen Integrated Criminal Rehabilitation Act, an act which I started writing a few years ago, the North American Citizen Integrated Rehabilitation Act, the North American Citizen Integrated Criminal Rehabilitation Act, for my brothers and sisters to get that defense, because we got a lot to defend, the children, the youth, of course, from a case of a nuclear war. For you are close to nuclear war, it's possible. The nuclear war is possible. It hasn't been possible close like this since about the missile crisis in the 1960s. It was the Cuba and the Soviet Union during the time of the more than 44 years of almost 45 years of the Cold War. So yours truly, what is calling for now is the call to action. And again, I encourage you all, of course, to try some gratitude. Try it out. Gratitude is great for mental health. I don't have much, but I live a simple, austere, severe, but very highly physically active and artistically creative. Very artistically, I create dialogues, of course, and movie ideas, and of course, I work out, train, exercise on a daily, on many days, and for years and years and years. I've been going to my second home, the mountain there, where of course I do meditations and see everything that's happening across the North American civilizational complex and across the collective North American civilization for what is unfolding now. Of course, I have predicted it in a general manner back in 2019 in October. So I'm calling all to willingly loving those willing loving for the supporting the dream, my dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, which I'm laying the foundations first and foremost with 718 trillions of kisses, some push-ups with it, make LOV and say LOV to our troops, because somebody making love, that gives me a little bit of hope. Somebody making that good loving tonight, and I like to get that matchmaking, and it's always gratitude 24/7 and geopolitics 24/7, and of course sports and fitness 24/7 right here in the Dragon's Lair. Not a big place, but it's better than where I used to live. I moved from a moldy place, and 7 years ago got out of being depressed and suicidal, and about 3.5 years ago I started accepting, yeah, I have Asperger's, I'm neurodivergent. It's been for years and years and years that I didn't really accept it, but there's no medication for Asperger's, so I just got to work on my symptoms. So now let's hear some of that. Jen Stolmer, I'm gonna send him some love.
Opportunity.
Some LOV.
And brought us to another critical decision: whether to enlarge NATO and welcome all adversaries as new allies. The countries of the former Warsaw Pact had already made their choice. They all wanted to join our alliance. Towering personalities like Lech Walesa and
Have some simple
food. The question was
it's
whether we
pork fat, salt and bread,
our
pork
door.
fat, salt and bread.
Some feared that enlargement would dilute and weaken NATO and provoke Moscow. Just as at previous crossroads, it was not an obvious choice. It was not an easy decision, and it took time. But in the end, we stood up for the right of every nation to choose its own path. We opened NATO's door. Hardly any decision in modern history has changed Europe more profoundly. NATO enlargement unified Europe in a way that was previously unthinkable, paved the way for EU integration, and brought peace and prosperity across the continent. Allies showed clarity and determination then, as we must continue to do now. Russia's war against Ukraine is the biggest security crisis in generations. Ukraine has shown remarkable courage, and NATO allies have provided unprecedented support. But
let's get back to Biden. LOV to Jen Stolmer. Gotta get LOV. Turning some pages, but let's get to Biden. It's Biden.
Watch IF on Paramount Plus before it's too late.
Am I disappearing? Oh, dear. Pretty sure that's not how this works. You ready for this?
Wow!
Welcome. In 1949, the leaders of 12 countries, including President Truman, came together in this very room. History was watching. Within 4 years, since the surrender of the Axis powers, the end of the most devastating war the world had ever known. Here, these 12
Love you, Biden.
gather
Love you, Biden. Big hugs.
to make a sacred pledge to defend each other against aggression, provide their collective security, and to answer threats as one, because they knew to prevent future wars, to protect democracy, to lay the groundwork for lasting peace and prosperity, they needed a new approach. They needed to combine their strengths. They needed an alliance. And here they signed the Washington Treaty and created the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the single greatest, most effective defensive alliance in the history of the world. Mr. Secretary General, leaders of NATO countries, foreign and defense ministers, representatives from partner nations in the European Union, and members of Congress, distinguished guests, welcome to the 2024 NATO Summit. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to host you in this milestone year, to look back with pride at all we've achieved and look ahead to our shared future with strength and with resolve.
An LOV.
Together,
An LOV. An
we
LOV.
rebuilt Europe from the ruins of war.
Hey, where the love at? Strength and resolve in LOV. Gonna check him. Love you, brother Biden, but I'm gonna say that LOV, man.
When former adversaries became fellow democracies, we welcomed them in the alliance. When war broke out in the Balkans, we intervened to restore peace and stop ethnic cleansing. And when the United States was attacked on September 11th, our NATO allies, all of you, stood with us, invoking Article 5 for the first time in NATO history, treating an attack on us as an attack on all of us. A breathtaking display of friendship that the American people will never, ever forget. For all this history, when great changes occurred, people would ask, can NATO adapt? And every time we proved we could adapt, and we did, evolving our strategy to stay ahead of threats, reaching out to new partners to increase our effectiveness. And here with us today are countries in the Indo-Pacific region. They're here because they have a stake in our success, and we have a stake in theirs. Today, NATO is more powerful than ever, 32 nations strong. For years, Finland and Sweden were among our closest partners. Now they have chosen to officially join NATO, and because of the power and meaning of Article 5 guarantee, that's the reason. It was the most important aspect of the alliance in 1949, and it is still the most important aspect. I'd also note, Finland and Sweden joined the alliance not just because their leaders sought it, because their citizens called for it in overwhelming numbers. Remember, NATO's character is fundamentally democratic, always has been and always must continue to be. And today, NATO is better resourced than it ever has been. I want to pause on this because it's significant. In the year 2020, the year I was elected president, only 9 NATO allies were spending 2% of their defense GDP on defense. This year, 23 will spend at least 2%. And some will spend more than that. And the remaining countries that have not yet reached that milestone will get there soon. This remarkable progress, proof that our commitment is broad and deep, that we're ready, that we're willing, we're able to deter aggression and defend every inch of NATO territory across every domain.
Defend,
Land,
man.
Air, sea, cyber, and space.
Play only defense. Coast to coast, ocean
My
to
friends,
ocean.
it's good that we're stronger than
Montreal
ever,
Hawk Island.
because this moment in history calls for our collective strength. Autocrats want to overturn global order, which is by and large kept for nearly 80 years and counting. Terrorist groups continue to plot evil schemes to cause mayhem and chaos and suffering. In Europe, Putin's war of aggression against Ukraine continues, and Putin wants nothing less than Ukraine's total subjugation. to end Ukraine's democracy, restore Ukraine's culture, and to wipe Ukraine off the map. And we know things don't stop at Ukraine, but make no mistake, Ukraine can and will stop Putin. Especially with our full collective support. They have our full support. Even before Russian bombs were falling in Ukraine, the alliance acted. I ordered the U.S. reinforcements at NATO's eastern flank. More troops, more aircraft, more capability. And now the United States has more than 100,000 troops on the continent of Europe. NATO moved swiftly as well. Not only reinforcing the 4 existing battle groups in the east, but also adding 4 more in Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia, essentially doubling NATO's strength on the eastern flank. Together, we built a global coalition to stand with Ukraine. Together, we provided significant economic and humanitarian assistance. And together, we've supplied Ukraine with weapons it needs to defend itself. Tanks, armored fighting vehicles, air defense systems, long-range missiles, and millions of munitions. The United States, nearly 24 allied partners, have signed a bilateral security agreement with Ukraine. And more countries will follow. Today, I'm announcing the historic donation of air defense equipment for Ukraine. The United States, Germany, the Netherlands, Romania, and Italy will provide Ukraine with equipment for 5 additional strategic air defense systems. In the coming months, the United States and our partners intend to provide Ukraine with dozens of additional tactical air defense systems. The United States will make sure that when we export critical air defense interceptors, Ukraine goes to the front of the line. So we'll get this assistance before anyone else gets it. All told, Ukraine will receive hundreds of additional interceptors over the next year, helping protect Ukrainian cities against Russian missiles, Ukrainian troops facing air attacks on the front line. Make no mistake, Russia is failing in this war. More than 2 years into Putin's war of choice, its losses are staggering. More than 350,000 Russian troops dead or wounded. Nearly 1 million Russians, many of them young people, have left Russia because they no longer see a future in Russia. And Kyiv, remember, fellows and ladies, supposed to fall in 5 days, remember? We're still standing 2.5 years later and will continue to stand.
Go Biden, go Biden. He's doing good. I give him a good hug. Good kisses.
All of the allies knew that before this war, Putin thought NATO would break. Today, NATO is stronger than it's ever been in its history. Since this war began, Ukraine is a free country. Today, it is still a free country. And the war will end with Ukraine remaining a free and independent country. Russia will not prevail. Ukraine will prevail. Ladies and gentlemen, this was a pivotal moment for Europe, for the transatlantic community, and I might add for the world. Let's remember, the fact that NATO remains the bulwark of global security did not happen by accident. It wasn't inevitable. Again and again at critical moments, we chose unity over disunion, progress over retreat, freedom over tyranny, hope over fear. Again and again we stood behind our shared vision of a peaceful and prosperous transatlantic community. Here at this summit, we gather to proclaim NATO is ready and able to secure that vision today and well into the future. Let me say this. An overwhelming bipartisan majority of Americans understand that NATO makes us all safer. The fact that both Democratic and Republican parties are represented here today is a testament to that fact. The American people know that all the progress we've made in the past 75 years has happened behind the shield of NATO. The American people understand what would happen if there was no NATO. Another war in Europe.
Go NATO, go.
American troops fighting and dying.
Go Biden,
Dictators
go NATO, go.
spreading chaos, economic collapse, catastrophe. Americans, they know we're strong with our friends, and we understand this is a sacred obligation. As President Reagan put it, and I quote, "For a fellow democracy is not secure, we cannot be secure. If you are threatened, we are threatened. If you're not at peace, we cannot be at peace." Reagan knew it then, and we know it now. Our nations will continue to keep faith with what we pledged in years to come. Now, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to end my remarks in a slightly unusual way. NATO is an alliance of nations, but also made up of leaders. And one person in particular has done an extraordinary job leading NATO for the last decade. Secretary General Stoltenberg, when he comes forward. So much of the progress we've made in the alliance is thanks to the Secretary. He's a man of integrity, an intellectual rigor, a calm temperament, a moment of pleasure, a consummate diplomat who works with leaders across the political spectrum and always finds a way to keep us moving forward. The Secretary has guided this alliance through one of the most consequential periods in its history. I realize, I'm talking to your wife, I personally ask you to extend your service. Forgive me. When you put your own plans on hold, when the Russia war in Ukraine began, you didn't hesitate.
Since I'm LOV to
Today,
Biden.
we're stronger, smarter,
Good
and more
LOV.
energized than when you began. And 1 billion people across Europe and North America, indeed the whole world, will reap the rewards of your labor for years to come, in the form of security, opportunity, and greater freedom. For these reasons, I'm pleased to award you the highest civilian honor the United States can bestow, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Ask the military to come forward. I'm asking to read the citation.
Very interesting speech. So I'm gonna send some LOV to Biden, send some LOV to Biden to that NATO. You know, they didn't say nothing about love, but I want to say something about love. LOV. You know, it requires with strength, complementary to strength, force, fire, military technology, military investments, and money. We gotta have some of that LOV because if somebody makes good loving tonight, you know. With a new love, old love, reacquainted all types of black and white with that rainbow love, black and white with that rainbow love, black and white with that rainbow love, for my homo love, for my lesbians love, for my rainbow XYZ love, you know, somebody making love, that's worth defending for and sharing, and of course building more and building and rebuilding and getting that coast to coast, that west side. Throwing that west side for that NATO, Go NATO Summit in Washington, second day. Tomorrow's going to be that third day. We're going to switch it to that French. Because we're in La Belle Province, so get ready for some French rock and roll in 3, 2, and 1. Bienvenue dans la grotte du Dragon Arc-en-Ciel. On va faire une petite chanson, bien sûr, avec la méditation, parce qu'on est dans la Belle Province. Puis je suis un analyste et théoricien en géopolitique, et puis je viens bien sûr de faire une analyse de ce que Biden a dit. Puis bien sûr, j'aurais aimé plus entendre le mot amour aussi, parce que tu sais, c'est sûr qu'il faut avoir l'alliance militaire, mais c'est important aussi d'avoir la balance, puis des choses de la compréhension, puis de l'amour, pour faire une balance à la force, puis bien sûr à la puissance militaire, puis la puissance de défense, ça prend plus de choses que la puissance militaire, puis que pour défendre, c'est aussi l'amour. C'est pas juste les intérêts économiques, mais c'est pour du monde qui vont faire de l'amour ce soir. Ça vaut la peine, ou demain, ou dans les prochains jours, semaines et mois à venir. C'est important, bien sûr, un ingrédient important pour la maintenance du collectif d'association nord-américain, pour le Québec, la belle province, pour le monde libre, pour l'Occident. Puis, bien sûr, c'est la deuxième rencontre aujourd'hui, deuxième jour de la rencontre de l'OTAN. Donc, on fait partie de l'OTAN, bien sûr, c'est l'organisation transatlantique, québécois et québécoises, le Canada en fait partie, puis bien sûr avec les États-Unis, puis 30 autres pays, puis je fais appel, bien sûr, au Mexique. Le Mexique qui devienne le 33e, puis dans les 7 prochaines années pour mon appel pour le 7e, pour qu'on soit en 44. Avant que je commence un petit rock-and-roll, je dois dire ma gratitude de mon loyer payé. J'ai payé mon loyer pour le mois de juillet, j'ai payé ma facture d'électricité, puis j'ai du café puis du thé, puis je viens de manger quelque chose de bon, puis je dois remercier mon ami anonyme pour avoir une salade plus tard, pour manger cette salade, très bonne salade avec du café, puis c'est la gratitude, c'est bon pour la santé mentale. Je vous encourage à la pratique, je vous encourage à l'entraînement physique, mais avec le remerciement, on y va pour les fermiers, les pompiers, amour pour les pompiers, amour pour les travailleurs de l'État Québec du passé qui ont bâti les centrales dans le 20e siècle, salutations au travail public à ceux qui ramassent le compostage, le recyclage, puis les poubelles. J'ai 3 services, ça prend du privé puis du public pour que ça danse ensemble pour le collectif d'association nord-américain, puis c'est la rencontre de l'OTAN, puis bien sûr moi-même je suis un analyste et théoricien indépendant en géopolitique, puis vous savez que j'ai l'Asperger's, puis encore une fois l'Asperger's n'est pas une maladie mentale, c'est une condition de neurodivergence. Je suis neurodivergent, puis ça veut dire que j'ai des intérêts obsessifs, j'ai des manières un peu bizarres, étranges, mais c'est pas une maladie mentale. Je dois juste travailler sur mes symptômes, puis je suis un maître. La géopolitique, c'est mon royaume et mon domaine, puis j'aime ça le sport, l'entraînement physique, la danse bien sûr. Je salue quand même la performance de hier soir du Canada contre l'Argentine, puis j'espère qu'on va gagner la 3e place. Là. C'est quand même un bon match, puis c'est la première fois qu'on se rend si loin. Fait que, amour et salutations, encore une fois. Je vous encourage à l'entraînement physique, puis je vais faire une petite méditation géopolitique, puis c'est super important que je mentionne mon appel, parce que j'ai des philosophies puis des initiatives que je fais appel à tous et toutes pour soutenir, bien sûr, qu'est-ce que j'appelle mon rêve, le rêve qui se manifeste comme le royaume de la déesse et du dragon qui danse, qui est fondamentalement un appel pour un partenariat public-privé à travers, qu'est-ce que j'appelle le collectif de civilisation nord-américain, ou à travers l'Amérique du Nord, ou le collectif de civilisation de l'Amérique du Nord, pour en être plus profondément en tant que philosophe. Puis, avant que je m'exprime, je dois aussi dire, bien sûr, que j'ai fait bien du travail géopolitique indépendant, au fait même que j'ai prévu la situation actuelle qui se déroule en géopolitique en 2019, en faisant des analyses profondes, intellectuelles et même académiques, mais pas d'une manière détaillée, mais d'une manière générale. J'ai prévu qu'il y aura une conflagration internationale, soit une 3e guerre mondiale en octobre 2019, et j'avais créé un entraînement physique pour aller parallèlement avec cette analyse, ce complexe d'analytique que j'ai fait en tant qu'analyste et théoricien en géopolitique indépendant, en étant aussi artiste et philosophe. Et bien sûr, aujourd'hui, je célèbre bien sûr le 75e anniversaire de l'OTAN. Comme j'ai dit, on fait partie de cette organisation, dont 32 membres, pays membres, le Canada en fait partie. Puis la Suède, c'est le 32e membre, le dernier membre, pays membre qui vient de se joindre, c'est la Suède. C'est la Suède. Puis il y a bien d'autres pays, bien sûr, l'Allemagne, l'Italie, la France, puis 30 pays de l'Europe, mais c'est la Turquie aussi. Là. La Turquie n'en fait partie. C'est pour ça que j'ai fait des analyses, bien sûr, que l'Ukraine ne faisait pas partie, ne fait pas encore partie de l'OTAN, ou ne fait pas partie de l'OTAN aujourd'hui, Israël non plus, Mexique non plus. Je fais appel que le 33e, ça soit Mexique, puis pour faire une expansion de l'OTAN dans les 7 prochaines années à 44, peut-être plus, 45, ça peut être 45, ça peut être 45, comme la durée de temps des années, la guerre froide qui a été entre 1947 et 1991, bien sûr, la guerre froide a duré plus que 44 ans, c'est quasiment 45 ans là, de guerre froide qu'il y a eu, puis bien sûr, c'est bon mentionner la guerre froide, parce que l'OTAN, ça sort de ces années de la guerre froide, puis ça continue après, là, ça continue jusqu'à aujourd'hui, puis il y a eu expansion, bien sûr, puis ça, c'est un des points des conflits avec la Russie qui a été, que bien sûr, que Vladimir Poutine, il a fait objection pour l'expansion de l'OTAN, qui a fait l'expansion en 2008, 2009 et 2007 avec la Bulgarie, puis bien sûr la Roumanie, puis les autres pays qui veulent rejoindre, comme la Géorgie et la Moldavie, qui faisaient bien sûr partie du bloc soviétique. La Moldavie puis la Géorgie, bien sûr, faisaient partie de l'Union soviétique. On a eu une guerre froide avec eux autres, le Canada aussi, des années 80, 1980, puis avant, puis après, les années 80 et 70, bien sûr, il y avait bien sûr des protocoles, bien sûr, puis des alarmes, puis bien sûr des entraînements dans un cas d'une guerre nucléaire, que maintenant c'est possible qu'il y ait une guerre nucléaire, on l'espère pas. C'est un scénario, bien sûr, qu'il faut bien sûr méditer avant, puis moi j'ai dit, bien sûr, comme initiative concrète, parce que là, je viens d'entendre une nouvelle qu'il y aura peut-être une augmentation de ce pourcentage de l'économie qui va être dédiée à la défense nationale, puis je dis avec amour, à tous ceux qui portent nos uniformes, beaucoup d'amour, de Rock&Roll, des câlins, puis des bisous, j'en ai en plein pour vous offrir, bien sûr, avec mes méditations géopolitiques, puis je suis un mystique, j'y crois dans la réincarnation, puis même que j'ai été né aux États-Unis après 1776 3 fois, une fois j'ai été né femme, puis 2 fois homme, j'avais servi dans deux guerres différentes des États-Unis, j'ai servi dans 2 guerres différentes des États-Unis après 1776, puis aujourd'hui, bien sûr, je fais bien sûr pour la défense, puis je suis toutes mes pensées puis mes initiatives, fondamentalement, qui sont un appel pour un partenariat public-privé, un PPP, c'est fondamentalement pour la défense de côte à côte, puis bien sûr avec nos alliés de l'OTAN, mais fondamentalement, je suis nord-américain, canadien, québécois, bien sûr, puis mes philosophies, puis mes géopolitiques, puis en tant que philosophe, mes initiatives sont pour, qu'est-ce que j'appelle le collectif de civilisation nord-américaine, l'Amérique du Nord, fondamentalement, il y a un principe, fondamentalement, même si je suis un citoyen pour la paix du monde, puis je peux être universel, je suis fondamentalement nord-américain, canadien, québécois, puis aujourd'hui, je fais bien sûr une méditation sur l'OTAN, puis l'expansion qui s'est produite avec la Suède, puis la rencontre de Washington pour célébrer la 75e anniversaire, puis je fais appel, bien sûr, à l'investissement pour qu'on se rende 2%. J'ai des idées pour que cet argent-là, parce que là, présentement, on dépense à peu près 1,3% du pourcentage pour la défense nationale, puis l'OTAN, l'organisation, requiert que les pays membres vont à minimum 2% ou qui se rendent à 2%. Fait qu'il y a plusieurs pays qui n'ont pas 2%, qui sont à 1,3 comme le Canada, 1,5, mais supposément aujourd'hui, on a eu une entente que Justin Trudeau, il a fait de la décision d'essayer dans les prochains mois, semaines, mois et les années à venir pour se rendre à 2% ou peut-être même plus dans cette situation de géopolitique de crise majeure. Puis il y a la guerre en Europe, puis bien sûr d'autres possibilités de guerre en Asie, là, avec la Chine puis la République de la Chine qui s'appelle le Taïwan, l'île Taïwan s'appelle la République de la Chine, puis la République populaire de la Chine, c'est le pays peuplé de 1,4 milliard de gens, puis c'est un conflit qu'ils n'ont pas résolu au 21e siècle, c'est possible qu'il y ait un conflit armé militaire. C'est possible qu'il y ait cette année, un conflit militaire commence en Asie aussi entre la République de la Chine, qui est l'île de Taïwan, puis la République populaire de la Chine. C'est possible, il y a une possibilité d'un conflit armé, un autre conflit qui devient une réalité de nos jours. C'est sûr, c'est cette possibilité-là qui c'est possible. Mais moi, qu'est-ce que je fais appel, c'est cet argent-là qui soit donné, qui soit fondé pour fonder 11, le chiffre après 10 avant 12, c'est 11, à travers le Canada, puis se baser notre force sur le fait qu'au Canada, on a une géographie très forte, puis on a quand même du territoire qui ressemble à l'Europe. On a des lacs, on a des rivières, on a des prairies, on a des montagnes. Fait pour fonder des places désignées pour l'entraînement militaire, pour que les armées des 30 pays de l'OTAN, ils viennent en rotation au moins 4 fois par année, printemps, été, puis bien sûr l'hiver, printemps, été, hiver, puis bien sûr automne, les 4 saisons minimum, ça peut être plus, qui viennent puis qui s'entraînent dans ces centres-là. Comme ça, on va pouvoir baser, puis bien sûr pour faire des protocoles puis des entraînements pour la possibilité d'évacuation de un certain pourcentage de des membres, des citoyens de ces 30 pays qu'on fait partie de cette alliance militaire dans le cas d'une guerre nucléaire, dans le cas qu'il y a une guerre nucléaire avec la Russie, puis dans le cas que la Russie ils envahissent un autre pays qui fait partie de l'OTAN. Parce que si la Russie fait l'invasion un pays membre de l'organisation transatlantique, l'article 5 dit que tous les alliés doivent intervenir parce que l'Ukraine ne faisait pas partie. C'est pour ça que l'OTAN ne s'est pas impliqué directement. On est impliqué d'une autre manière. Je ne vais pas discuter ça parce que vous savez, les protocoles législatifs, c'est toujours pour des référendums puis des votes populaires dans le cas qu'on n'a pas d'alliance directe avec ces pays-là, comme par exemple dans le conflit, bien sûr, avec le Taïwan puis la Chine. S'il y a un conflit, le Taïwan, la République du Taïwan, qui est nommée la République de la Chine, l'île de Taïwan, qui a quand même un conflit non résolu au 20e siècle, durant la guerre froide, puis durant la guerre civile, ne fait pas partie de l'OTAN. comme d'autres pays qui ne font pas partie de l'OTAN. Mettons, si la Russie envahit ou décide d'attaquer la Suède, maintenant la Suède en fait partie. C'est devenu le 32e membre. La Finlande aussi en fait partie. Fait qu'on serait obligé de faire une intervention, mais dans d'autres pays, on n'est pas obligé. Mettons, la Russie envahit le Kazakhstan. Le Kazakhstan n'est pas partie de l'OTAN, ou Turkménistan, ou d'autres Stan, ou Afghanistan. On n'a pas des alliances militaires. L'alliance militaire, c'est l'OTAN. On a 32e, puis je fais appel au Mexique. Le Mexique devient le 33e que devient le Mexique. Puis dans les prochains 7 ans, là, les septièmes du Dragon, que l'expansion de l'OTAN sera en 45, 44, 44, 45 pays là, dans les prochaines années à venir. Puis, bien sûr, je fais appel pour la construction de ces sites. On site à travers le Canada, de côte à côte, d'océan à océan, pour pouvoir faire ces entraînements militaires. Puis, bien sûr, j'ai des idées et des détails, mais je ne peux pas tout partager. Là. Ce serait avec Bill Blair, le ministre de la Défense nationale, avec mon frère citoyen Bill Blair, avec le ministre de la Défense nationale, avec Bill Blair, mon citoyen de la Défense nationale, pour en discuter avec lui, principalement, puis avec d'autres, bien sûr, chefs d'État de l'OTAN, pour comment aménager ça, parce que bien sûr, je suis un analyste et théoricien en géopolitique, puis je fais des méditations de défense collectif, bien sûr, principalement pour le Canada, puis le Québec, puis l'île de Montréal, bien sûr, depuis des années que j'en fais indépendant, puis j'ai plusieurs idées, mais je crois fondamentalement que ce 0,7% qui manque pour qu'on se rende à 2%, ça serait des milliards, ça serait plusieurs milliards, bien sûr, qu'on va pouvoir dépenser, puis mettre pour en faire ces constructions, bien sûr, à travers le Canada, par un partenariat public-privé, puis cet argent-là, ça va être dans des milliards, pour la construction de ces sites, pour faire beaucoup de simulations durant là, ce temps difficile géopolitique, puis pour faire bien sûr de l'entraînement comme si on fait une simulation pour l'évacuation dans un cas d'une guerre nucléaire en Europe, dans le cas que ça devient une guerre nucléaire en Europe, puis pour sauver certains gens, un pourcentage des gens de ces 30 pays membres dont on a l'alliance. Tu sais, ça serait quelque chose pour ça qu'il faut construire, ça c'est principalement, puis fonder notre force sur le fait que le Canada, c'est le plus grand pays en tant que géographie, là, en tant que le pays, comment qui est large, comment qui est gros en tant que géographie, puis territoire, c'est le Québec, c'est le Canada, le Québécois, le Québécois, le Québec, le Canada, puis au Québec, on va pouvoir bâtir peut-être 2-3, Ontario aussi 2-3 centres à différentes divergences pour avoir une géographie de montagne. Au Québec, on a bien des montagnes, on a des rivières, on a des lacs, on va pouvoir faire, puis c'est ça fondamentalement, c'est ça qu'il faut faire. Ça, il faut faire ça. Ça commence avec moi-même donnant cette idée ici, là, puis prenez-les, si vous voulez financer, puis la continuité de cette discussion, puis l'aménagement, vous pouvez financer, vous pouvez m'offrir de l'affaire, parce que je vis juste un stress financier en ce moment, j'ai juste un stress financier, mais j'ai bien sûr, à part le stress financier, je suis quand même joyeux, je vis une vie simple, sévère, puis j'ai mes joies de sport, sportif, je regarde le sport, puis je fais de l'analyse, puis la théorie en géopolitique, fondamentalement, c'est ça que je fais, 24/24 chez nous, puis l'entraînement physique, puis la géopolitique, puis avec ben du rock-and-roll, par exemple, il faut dire le mot amour, parce que ça vaut la peine que quelqu'un fasse l'amour pour vous défendre, quelqu'un qui fait l'amour, puis ça me rend toujours content puis joyeux quand je marche, je fais mes longues marches à la montagne, qui est ma deuxième maison, quand je vois du monde qui se donne des câlins, puis des bisous, puis qui se donne un peu d'amour, qui se donne, tiennent pas la main, que ça vaut la peine de défendre ça, parce que je dis toujours, si je mets un uniforme, puis je marche, puis je fais de la patrouille ou quoi que ce soit, j'aimerais mieux voir ça, des monde qui se tient pas la main, puis qui se danse en sécurité dans la rue, puis qui se donne des bisous, puis des câlins en place de voir, tu sais, puis c'est important de faire la sublimation de l'agression, tu sais, mettez des gants de boxe, puis on garde ça, sportsmanship, tu sais, c'est pas toujours gagner puis perdre, des fois c'est comment qu'on joue, puis on donne le 100%, puis t'as bien fait, comme au football américain, quand Tom Brady, je dis toujours l'exemple de Tom Brady dans ses jeux, si vous voyez après le match, même s'il y a une victoire de 44-22, là, il y a une victoire de 44-22, il a dominé totalement le match là, en tant qu'offensive à 44-22, il dit à l'autre, il dit amour, je t'aime, il dit en anglais I love you, je t'aime, tu sais, c'est Tom Brady, tu vois, souvent quand il donne des après le match, là, même s'il a dominé complètement, puis c'est un fin final de 44 points à 22 points, là, Tom Brady dit toujours à l'autre, tu vois, I love you, je t'aime, c'est l'amour aussi, c'est important pour en défendre, puis on a une nature qui doit faire l'amour, puis c'est toujours balancé, la force, la puissance, par ces autres choses-là, la compréhension, l'amour, c'est bien beau d'avoir la puissance, puis la force, comme Louis Cyr, mais ça prend aussi de j'en mange, la Céline Dion, puis de tout pour faire une collective de civilisation, fait que aujourd'hui, en faisant cette méditation, bien sûr, je pense toujours à mes propres souffrances aussi, en tant qu'Aspies, puis en tant qu'avoir survécu la COVID, puis quand je suis sorti de la dépression, puis je suis quand même heureux ces dernières années, j'ai accepté mon Asperger, j'ai mes forces, la géopolitique, c'est mon royaume, mon domaine, même au point que j'ai prévu, puis c'est ça que je fais appel pour la construction de ce pourcentage qui soit dédié à la construction de ces 11 à travers le Canada pour avoir basé la géographie, avoir basé sur notre géographie, le complexe canadien non-américain, qu'on soit, bien sûr, on est le pays le plus expansif, qu'il y a plus de territoire, puis ce territoire, il y a une diversité, que je pense que c'est pour contribuer à l'OTAN, puis pour qu'on dédie ce pourcentage, ces millions, milliards, pour la construction de ces camps d'entraînement, pour qu'ils viennent souvent, 4 fois minimum par année, à chaque saison, le printemps, l'été, l'automne, puis l'hiver, pour qu'ils viennent ici les armées, puis bien sûr, ils peuvent faire mon entraînement physique avec des pompes, des canets, puis bien sûr de la marche, puis qu'on fait ces simulations, comme si dans une guerre nucléaire, pour la défense, sécurité puis service. Puis ça faire le mouvement vers le 21e siècle pour se rendre plus de services. Parce que fondamentalement, c'est ça, les forces de l'ordre, puis les forces de police, la SPV, c'est le service de police de la Ville de Montréal. Puis dans une autre vie, j'ai servi comme 45 mois. Là. Quand j'ai rencontré le j'ai servi dans une autre vie, dans la GRC aussi, puis dans la SPV, dans une autre vie, j'ai servi dans l'armée. J'étais né homme-femme, femme-homme. Puis maintenant, vous avez le Dragon arc-en-ciel. Le 50-50, mais ça, c'est juste une chose plus personnelle. Mais des fois, il faut laisser ces choses que je fais partie de la communauté LGBTQ de côté, puis juste prendre mes philosophies, puis mes initiatives, puis juste focuser sur ça, puis qu'est-ce que je dis, puis le mettre en action. Que je dis, faites des pompes, faites de l'entraînement physique, je vous encourage, la gratitude, faites des méditations, parce que la civilisation, c'est un privilège, c'est les centrales au Québec, les fermes, l'infrastructure, les autoroutes, tout ça qu'on a, tu sais. C'est beau à défendre quand même pour le futur. Puis ici, en Amérique du Nord, on a fait ce que j'appelle le grand compromis linguistique. En tant que philosophe, ça c'est une des philosophies ici qu'on a fait le grand compromis linguistique du français pour la continuité de la paix et de l'harmonie en Amérique du Nord, ou qu'est-ce que j'appelle le collectif de civilisation nord-américain. Qu'on n'est pas tout à fait divorcé, mais on est distinct. On a des distinctions avec l'Occident, mais on n'est pas divorcé. Hein. On n'est pas divorcé de l'Occident, mais on a des distinctions. Ça, c'est le principe qu'il faut retenir de cette philosophie que j'y crois que c'est une vérité. Là, on est un complexe nouveau de civilisation nouvelle. Parce que les Nord-Américains, je dis souvent je suis Nord-Américain, Canadien, Québécois, puis pour la paix mondiale internationale, le plus que je puisse l'être, mais fondamentalement, je suis Québécois, Canadien, Nord-Américain. Je suis ouvert de cœur, d'esprit pour être universel, mais fondamentalement, c'est l'île de Montréal que je connais, bien sûr, puis je pense que ça fait déjà plus que 4 ans que je n'ai pas sorti de la ville de Montréal. Quand j'ai eu la COVID, c'était en février-mars 2020 déjà, puis je dis souvent que c'est super important d'avoir la gratitude pour la santé mentale, pour l'entraînement physique aussi, pour le corps, pour l'esprit, puis c'est important la gratitude, puis ces méditations que je fais, puis c'est ces appels à cette action, puis cet appel à mon frère Bill Blair de dédier un pourcentage de cette augmentation, parce que le budget de la défense nationale va augmenter dans les prochains jours, semaines à venir, puis avec l'implémentation de ma théorie de la refusion de la dette, la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, qui contient dans elle la théorie d'intégration monétaire, c'est qu'est-ce qu'on fait de l'Europe, qu'on fasse une monnaie commune en Amérique du Nord que j'appelle l'unité, échange, unité d'échange, échange universel, basé sur le dollar américain, 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 basé sur le dollar américain. Fait que c'est ça qu'il faut qu'on fasse, c'est des théories puis des philosophies qu'il faut faire l'implémentation. Ça commence aujourd'hui, ce 10 juillet avec moi, puis le deuxième jour de 3 jours de rencontre vis-à-vis de l'anniversaire, la 75e anniversaire, la 75e anniversaire, la 75e anniversaire de cette alliance militaire qui s'est faite initialement en 1949 et durant la guerre froide, que la guerre froide a duré quasiment 45 ans, c'est 45 ans et 9 mois, 44 ans et 9 mois, fait que quasiment quasiment 45 ans, la guerre froide. Une guerre froide, ça a duré de mars 1947 à décembre 1991. La guerre froide a duré de mars 1947 à décembre 1991. La guerre froide, c'était une longue période là, de conflit, de mars 1947 à décembre 1991. C'était long, la guerre froide. Ça a produit bien des missiles nucléaires, puis des satellites, puis bien sûr des guerres pas direct, indirectement, des soutiens indirectement de guerre à travers le Vietnam puis d'autres pays, bien sûr, des conflits avec le communisme, le socialisme, la démocratie puis le capitalisme. Là, je vais faire un aperçu général, mais c'est sûr qu'il y a eu des fragmentations puis des choses, bien sûr, de dictature qui ont fait des alliances avec démocratie puis des choses comme ça. Je ne vais pas rentrer dans les détails de faire toute l'exploration de ces quasiment 45 ans, plus 44 ans, 44 et 9 mois là, que la guerre froide a duré parce que c'était quand même plusieurs détails et des complexités qui n'étaient pas si, c'était pas si noir et blanc, là, c'était pas si noir et blanc, il y avait bien du gris dans ça, ces événements-là, puis bien sûr, c'est maintenant qu'on vit une conséquence parce que, juste pour dire, l'Ukraine, le conflit en Ukraine, c'est le conflit avec la Russie et l'Ukraine, c'est le plus gros conflit depuis la Deuxième Guerre mondiale. Il n'y a jamais eu depuis 70 ans, un conflit comme ça en Europe. Puis l'Ukraine, puis la Russie, pendant bien des décennies, comme 50, 70, 70, plus quasiment 80 ans, ils étaient unis avec la Moldavie aussi. Ils ont formé une seule entité politique. L'Union soviétique. Bon, pas discuter dedans. Mais aujourd'hui, le 10 juillet 2024, on doit se focusser pour aujourd'hui, puis pour demain, puis pour les 7 prochaines années. Je l'appelle du septennum pour le Dragan, puis que je fais appel, bien sûr, que cet argent-là qu'on va augmenter pour le budget militaire, que ça soit dédié pour la construction de ces 11 centres à travers le parti, à travers le Canada, pour faire l'entraînement physique, puis faire l'entraînement militaire, bien sûr, avec ma théorie, implémentation de ma théorie, la théorie d'intégration citoyenne, bien sûr, pour faire là, bien sûr, la simulation dans un cas de guerre nucléaire, comment on ferait pour aider l'évacuation d'un pourcentage de ces 30 pays. Donc, on est allié avec un militaire, on a une alliance militaire qui se nomme l'OTAN, qu'on célèbre aujourd'hui 75 ans. Puis, bien sûr, comment qu'on fait pour, dans un cas qu'il y a une guerre nucléaire, comment qu'on fait pour faire un partenariat public-privé avec les avions, puis les aviations, puis les aéroports, bien sûr, puis les avions militaires, pour un certain pourcentage, faire l'évacuation pour qu'on déménage en Amérique du Nord s'il y a une guerre nucléaire en Europe, parce qu'on est une alliance militaire, fait qu'un certain pourcentage de la population de la France, l'Allemagne, l'Italie, la Belgique, puis c'est 30 pays, la Suède, la Norvège, la Finlande, qui font partie de cette alliance, un certain pourcentage, pour qu'on les sauve si on peut. Ça va être bien sûr des décisions quand même sévères dans ces cas-là, parce que tu sais, c'est surtout, moi-même, je dirais, priorité les jeunes, les adolescents, puis les enfants, puis les jeunes, les enfants surtout, là, les bébés, les enfants plutôt, les évacuations premières, puis les jeunes en premier, là, c'est ça qu'on devrait faire dans ce cas-là. C'est quand même une question morale, là, morale, mais par cœur, par amour, je dirais que ça serait ça les plus jeunes, la jeunesse, les bébés, les nouveau-nés, puis les bébés, tout ça, pour l'évacuation de ces pays, des 30 pays, dans un cas d'une guerre nucléaire, pour faire ces entraînements-là, et comment on ferait la défensive, pour avoir la défensive, pour pouvoir défendre les femmes, principalement les femmes, puis les choses essentielles comme l'eau, l'eau potable, les femmes, puis ces choses-là dans ces cas de défense, bien sûr, parce que moi je suis juste pour la défense, mes protocoles puis les initiatives, c'est fondamentalement pour la défense du collectif d'association nord-américaine, Canada de côte à côte, bien sûr, puis pour l'OTAN, le collectif d'association nord-américaine de l'OTAN, de l'Occident, dans le fond, de l'OTAN, puis même je suis pour la paix mondiale, c'est fondamentalement un point de vue défensif, comme au Super Bowl, je dis toujours que mes défenses se basent beaucoup sur l'entraînement du sport de la Ligue nationale de football. Donc, bien sûr, les 49ers, le San Francisco, avec bien sûr Joe Montana en 1989 puis 90, quand il a gagné par comme 55 points, un gros offensif. Puis pour la défensive, le Super Bowl 52, qui a été le moins. Il y a eu moins de points, ça a fini 13-3, ça a fini 13-3, bien sûr que Tom Brady a gagné son dernier Super Bowl avec les Patriots, puis bien sûr l'autre qui s'appelle le Harbaugh Ball, comme les 49ers, pour la première fois, ils ont perdu dans la finale contre les Ravens, quand il y a eu la blackout, là, fait que c'est ça, that's it, that's all, rock and roll, l'amour est santé, love and hell, get a drill, man.